Welcome to the Explainer. Look, there's a massive structural economic shift happening literally right beneath the surface of the software industry today. We're talking about the impending transition toward machine-to-machine commerce. And if you're a financial analyst or an institutional investor, getting a grip on this is absolutely crucial because it completely rewrites the rules for technology valuation and asset allocation for the entire next decade. So, here is the million-dollar, or maybe trillion-dollar question we need to answer today. When machines can actually pay for things themselves, where does durable value accrue? Right now, the overwhelming market consensus assumes that value is just going to permanently live in the software and AI model layers. But as we'll see, that consensus is fundamentally flawed. Because when the primary economic actor shifts from a human being to a machine, the entire architecture of our digital markets has to shift right along with it.
To break this all down, we're going to move through a strict six-part framework. We'll start with the limits of current software models, then look at the X402 protocol catalyst. Next, we'll cover how APIs become commodity markets, the hurdles of solving identity and settlement, why energy is the ultimate price floor, and finally, exactly where you should be directing your capital.
All right, part one, the limits of SaaS. Let's look at exactly why our legacy billing infrastructure is actively bottlenecking AI. The contrast between our economic past and our economic future is honestly pretty staggering. Think about the legacy SaaS model. It's sluggish, right? It relies entirely on humans, monthly billing cycles, sticky integrations, and, this is key, a complete lack of price awareness at the exact moment a task happens. That's fine if AI is just a tool in a corporate budget, but the emerging machine-to-machine, or M2M market, it's a totally different beast. It demands high-frequency, precision pricing. We're talking millisecond micropayments, fluid spot markets, dynamic selection. An autonomous AI making hundreds of decisions a minute simply cannot wait 30 days for an invoice to figure out if a task makes economic sense. When you zoom out and look at the whole machine economy stack, you can actually track how the economic gravity is shifting. Right now, a ton of capital is totally bottlenecked at layer 4, the logic and orchestration layer, basically the AI models themselves. But as the old subscription constraints break down, that gravity inevitably migrates. It pushes heavily down toward the harsh physical realities of layer 2, energy and compute, and it pushes way up toward the necessary institutional rails of layer 5, identity and settlement. Which brings us to part 2, the X402 protocol catalyst. This is the specific technical trigger forcing the market away from SaaS. You've probably heard the term X402 floating around in recent tech leaks. But it is absolutely vital we don't just view this as some new consumer product. It's a massive directional signal. It's basically the revival of the long-dormant HTTP 402 payment-required status code, something built into the very early internet but never fully realized until right now. It's a protocol-level mechanism that enables real-time, machine-native settlement without any human mediation whatsoever. It is literally the foundational infrastructure for agent commerce. Just picture this sequence happening in mere milliseconds. An agent is working on a complex task and hits an API endpoint needs. Instantly, that endpoint fires back a 402 status with an exact execution price. The agent rapidly runs the math, evaluating that marginal cost against the expected value of its current goal. If the math checks out, boom, a cryptographic settlement executes immediately. The agent now has true price awareness at the exact point of action. Now, to make that kind of rapid-fire transaction a reality, a dense array of brand new infrastructure is actively being built. We're not just tweaking old software, we are laying down entirely new rails. The market is screaming for payment-aware API protocols, programmatic wallets for these agents, real-time spot pricing, low-latency settlement rails that move at network speed, and verifiable machine identity standards. And look, this isn't just a theoretical white paper anymore. The institutional signals are flashing bright green. Coinbase is already out there publishing explicit implementation guidance for X402 style flows. In parallel, Stripe is actively previewing its own machine payments infrastructure. These financial titans know exactly what's up. When machines become the primary buyers of machine intelligence, the commerce layer has to operate at machine speed. This leads us right into part 3. APIs become commodity markets. The second-order consequences here are severe. Think about the current setup: static, human-authorized integrations. Now compare that to a world where an agent gains price-aware execution. That agent can evaluate a dozen API endpoints simultaneously, each with a live price tag. It can arbitrage temporary price differences between providers in a fraction of a second. It ruthlessly routes its tasks based strictly on cost, latency, and quality. APIs are no longer these sticky, long-term corporate relationships. They become fluid, highly competitive commodity spot markets.
If you are allocating capital anywhere near the software sector, this is the headline you need to pay attention to. Fluid spot markets are going to trigger severe software margin compression. When API providers are forced to compete continuously on absolute execution price for every single call, the incredibly lucrative economics of SaaS just collapse. Differentiation shifts immediately away from slick UI or brand prestige and moves entirely to bare metal capacity, network latency, and raw hardware efficiency.
Part 4, Solving Identity and Settlement. While the shift to commodity markets is obvious, we got to look at the roadblocks holding it back. So, what are the primary frictions bottlenecking this deployment? Technically, verifying payments on a per-call basis adds latency and throughput limits that our current account-based systems just aren't built for. Economically, current SaaS providers are fighting this tooth and nail. They love their sticky monthly revenue and are terrified of margin compression. And from a regulatory standpoint, it's a massive gray area. Agents don't have legal identities. If an autonomous bot makes a costly financial error, who exactly is liable? And how on earth do you enforce anti-money laundering laws on microtransactions firing off thousands of times a second?
Let's shift our focus down to the bedrock for Part 5, Energy as the Price Floor.
There is this persistent, almost fatal analytical blind spot in AI commentary right now. People assume intelligence is the scarce resource. It's actually not. At the logic layer, intelligence itself is commoditizing fast. But physical infrastructure? That isn't. It's deeply ironic. The most ethereal, advanced artificial intelligence is forcing us right back to the hardest physical constraints imaginable. Energy is the irreducible price floor for every single autonomous transaction. When an agent calculates the cost of an API call, it's really calculating if the energy cost of the underlying compute is worth the economic output. As pricing becomes transparent, simple geographic variations in energy costs are going to translate into pure competitive advantage. Which brings us to our final, highly focused institutional thesis in Part 6, Capital Allocation Directives. To unlock these new markets and resolve the current bottlenecks, the industry absolutely has to build out Layer 5. Machine identity and high-frequency settlement, these are the critical final hurdles. The organizations that manage to build the settlement infrastructure that can keep up with pure agent speed, they are going to occupy structurally indispensable, highly defensible positions. Think of them like the clearinghouses of traditional finance or the grid operators in energy markets. They become the toll booths for the entire machine economy. So our capital allocation directive here is pretty straightforward. Long-term capital needs to aggressively pivot away from the commoditizing orchestration layer. Layer 4 logic is just going to be abstracted away by slightly smarter, ever cheaper software models. Instead, investment has to move toward the deeply infrastructural layers where durable, highly defensible value is concentrating. That means Layer 5 for identity and settlement, and Layer 2 for energy and physical compute. And that leaves us with one final, pretty uncomfortable question you need to take away from this explainer. As the X402 protocol shifts software from comfortable subscriptions to brutal, fluid spot markets, execution prices will inevitably compress right down to the bare cost of energy. So you really need to ask yourself today, is your portfolio positioned for the inflated software margins of the past, or is it ready for the high-frequency commodity markets of the machine economy? Think very carefully about where your capital sits right now before the global market fully reprices this reality.